I loved my Korean Mafia boss for 3 years the night he chose her. I chose myself, and he lost everything. My feet were the first things that knew. Not my heart. Not my mind. My feet in 4-inch heels on polished marble, carrying me toward the elevator before the rest of me had accepted what I had just watched happen beneath 3 crystal chandeliers. The ballroom was not quiet. 200 guests filled the Gold Coast property. A string quartet played near the curved windows. Champagne moved through the room on silver trays. 6 men in black suits stood along the walls with the disciplined stillness of people who were not hired to serve drinks. The annual Kang Group Investor Gala had taken me 8 weeks to build and Sojin Kang less than 8 seconds to destroy. But all I heard was my own footsteps. Click, click, click. And the number 14, because the elevator was 14 steps away, and counting gave my mind something solid to hold. 14, 13, 12. Behind me, Sojin still had one hand resting at the small of Nadia Bey's back. He had just introduced her as his future wife. He had just named her executive partner of the legitimate company I had helped transform. He had just announced a union between the Kang and Bey families while standing in a ballroom I designed, in front of city officials whose trust I earned, using expansion plans written at his kitchen table in my handwriting. And he had looked directly at me before he did it. 11, 10, 9. I did not cry in that elevator. I need you to understand that before anything else. The doors closed, cutting off the applause, and I stood inside the mirrored walls I had selected because warm reflections made arriving guests feel as if they had stepped into a better version of themselves. I knew that because I had researched it, because I measured everything, because that is the kind of woman I am. The woman in the mirror wore a deep burgundy dress. Her silk press was smooth. Her edges were clean. Her shoulders were straight, even though something inside her had just split open. I had bought the dress because Sojin once watched me prepare for a council dinner and said, almost absent-mindedly, "You disappear too easily into rooms. Wear red sometime." I chose burgundy because it was close, because I wanted him to see me. He had seen me. He had simply decided I was the one person in the room he could afford not to choose. Not here, I told my reflection. My voice did not shake. Not for him. Not in this elevator. The doors opened into the lobby. I walked past the security desk, through the brass-framed entrance, and into the cold honesty of a Saturday night in Chicago. November air struck my face. Black SUVs idled at the curb. 2 of Sojin's guards turned toward me, uncertain whether to follow. I lifted one hand without looking back. They stopped. I stood on the sidewalk I had ordered swept and salted that afternoon and took one full breath. His name is Sojin Kang. I loved him for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. By the end of the following summer, he would lose the Bey Alliance, 4 major assets, the chairmanship of his legitimate company, the loyalty of the investors who had once crossed rooms to greet him, and the only woman who had ever built beside him without asking to own him. But that night, neither of us knew the full shape of what was coming. I only knew that my feet had carried me out before my heart could beg me to stay. This is my story. And to understand why one woman walking out could make an empire fall, I have to tell you what I built before I left. I came to Chicago from Columbus, Ohio, when I was 26 years old, carrying 2 suitcases, a hospitality management degree, and a kind of determination I inherited from 2 people who had spent most of their adult lives proving that their names belonged in rooms that had not expected them. My name is Ezen Okoye. My father is from Enugu. My mother is from Lagos. They arrived in the United States with advanced degrees that were treated like interesting souvenirs until they earned new certifications, passed new exams, and proved the same intelligence over and over in a country that demanded repetition before recognition. My father became a civil engineer. My mother taught secondary mathematics. They built a stable life, one credential, one contract, one classroom at a time. Their favorite sentence was simple. Put your name on what you build. I understood the words long before I understood the warning inside them. The job listing appeared on a Wednesday afternoon while I sat in the kitchen of an apartment shared with 2 roommates. Senior Events Coordinator, the Kang Group, Chicago, Illinois. 6 luxury venues, 2 fine dining restaurants, and a flagship property in the Gold Coast. The salary was the most money I had ever seen, printed beside a position I could reasonably claim. I accepted the interview before I finished reading the description. The top floor of Kang Group headquarters was all glass, stone, and silence. The kind of office designed to make visitors lower their voices without being asked. I was interviewed by 3 executives who looked at my resume, asked predictable questions, and seemed surprised when I answered with specific occupancy projections, vendor loss percentages, and a plan for improving weekday corporate bookings. The 4th person entered 20 minutes late. Sojin Kang wore a black suit with no tie. His hair was swept back from his forehead. A line of ink disappeared beneath his collar on the left side of his neck. 2 men followed him into the room, stopped beside the door, and did not sit. That was the first moment I understood the Kang Group was not only what it appeared to be. He did not apologize for being late. He read 1 page of my resume and asked, "Why did your last venue lose its pharmaceutical contract?" The executives shifted. "That information was not on the resume," I said, because management blamed the client for changing requirements instead of admitting the account director failed to document them. "Were you the account director?" "No." "Then why did you leave?" "Because I was asked to repair a relationship without being given the authority to correct the behavior that damaged it." His gaze lifted from the paper. "What would you have done with the authority?" "Apologized without excuses. Reassigned the account. Documented every future change. Then I would have given the client 1 reason to trust us again instead of 10 reasons to forgive us." The room went quiet. Sojin closed the folder. "Hire her," he said. That was our beginning. The Kang Group was several worlds stacked on top of one another. The first was public: luxury hospitality, commercial real estate, private events, restaurants, and investment partnerships. The second was private: family obligations, old loyalties, debts nobody documented, and men who used the word business when they meant something no city license covered. The deepest layer belonged to Sojin. People called him a businessman in rooms with microphones. In rooms without them, they called him the man who controlled the Korean crews from Chicago to parts of the East Coast. I never asked for operational details. He never offered them. What I knew was enough. He had inherited a divided organization at 28, survived challenges from men twice his age, and turned violence into order with a coldness that made even his allies careful around him. His shadow world did not touch my work. That was the boundary I set before there was anything personal between us. "If your darkness crosses my desk," I told him once, 14 months after I arrived, "I leave before sunset." He studied me for a long moment. "Then it will never cross your desk." It never did. What crossed my desk was everything required to keep the Kang name legitimate in daylight. I began with events, then vendor relations, then property operations, then city licensing, because 1 renewal stalled and I was the only person willing to walk into the commercial licensing division and ask why. That was where I met Director Avery Hollis. He was direct, methodical, and unimpressed by expensive stationery. The Kang Group had treated his office as a gate to force open. I treated it as a group of people trying to protect a city from businesses that believed money should exempt them from procedure. I listened. I corrected the application. I returned with the missing inspection records. I did not name-drop Sojin. I did not threaten escalation. I followed through. The renewal cleared 5 days later. The next one cleared faster. Within a year, Director Hollis called me before small issues became large ones. Council members returned my messages because I did not contact them only when I wanted something. Inspectors knew that if I promised a correction by Tuesday, it would be documented Tuesday morning. I was not networking. I was working the way my parents taught me to work. Remember that institutions are made of people, and people remember how you make their jobs harder or easier. Sojin noticed slowly, then all at once. He asked me to dinner to discuss the expansion pipeline. I arrived with a folder. He arrived with 2 guards who took the table behind us. He asked what I thought of the River North acquisition. I told him it was a mistake. Nobody spoke to Sojin that directly. I knew because his guards both looked up. "The building is beautiful," I said, "but beauty is not the same as viability. The loading access will fail every high-capacity event. The neighborhood association already opposes late licensing, and your projected renovation cost ignores structural reinforcement. You reviewed the engineering report?" I requested it. "Without authorization?" "With responsibility." 1 corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. Something rarer. "What would you buy instead?" I showed him a West Loop property nobody on the executive team had considered. He bought it 6 weeks later. It became the highest-earning venue in the portfolio. That was how I fell in love with him, not because he was feared, not because he was wealthy, and not because danger made him more interesting. I fell because he listened when I was right, because he remembered what other people discarded, because beneath all the control, There were moments when he looked at me as if precision itself could become intimacy. The night that truly changed us came during a snowstorm in our second year. A pipe burst above the Gold Coast Ballroom 2 days before a charity auction. I stayed until nearly midnight coordinating repairs. When the last contractor left, I found Sojin alone in the unfinished West Corridor, holding a roll of yellowed architectural drawings. "My father's original plans," he said. I moved beside him. The paper showed a building more ambitious than the one around us, an open atrium, a rooftop garden, a curved staircase that had never been built. "My father wanted this place to look permanent," he said. He built like a man who knew nothing in his life was. It was the most personal thing he had ever told me. I traced the rooftop garden with one finger. My father wanted to be an architect. In Nigeria. By the time his credentials transferred here, engineering was the path that could feed us fastest. Sojin looked at me. I had mentioned that once, almost a year before. He remembered. "What would he change?" he asked. "Everything decorative that weakens the load path." That made him laugh quietly, genuinely. Then he unrolled another page across a construction table. It was a concept drawing for a future property, one he had never shown the executive team. At the top was a blank stone facade where the venue name would eventually go. "One day," he said, "you should put your name on a building like this." I looked at him. He looked back without performance, without the cold authority everyone else received. "You see structures before other people understand they need them," he said. "That should belong to you." The kiss happened after that. Slow. Certain. Nothing like the dangerous man people imagined, and everything like the precise man I had come to know. By year 2, I had keys to his apartment. By year 3, I was director of group operations across all 6 properties. I sat in on legitimate expansion meetings, managed city relationships, approved executive hires, and knew which part of Sojin's silence meant anger, exhaustion, calculation, or fear. He called me his home. I believed that meant I was his future. That was my mistake. Need can sound exactly like love when you are the person making someone's life work. The annual Investor Gala was my event. I selected the theme, approved the vendors, designed the arrival sequence, reviewed every seating position, tested the lighting, coordinated the quartet, and confirmed the emergency plan with Sojin's security chief, Daeho Han. Daeho had served beside Sojin for 8 years. He was not warm, but he respected competence, and over time that became its own kind of loyalty. On the afternoon of the gala, he arrived with twice the usual security team. "Family attendance changed," he said. "Whose family?" His eyes moved away from mine for half a second. That was the first warning. The second came in the car. Sojin typed on his phone the entire drive. His thumb moved with the controlled precision it had when he was making decisions he disliked but had already accepted. I asked about the investment table. He answered correctly and briefly. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No." It was the first direct lie he had told me badly. At the entrance, Daeho acknowledged Sojin and looked past me. Not through me, past me. Like a man who knew what was coming and had decided warning me would be disloyal to one of us. I filed it away and went to work. The ballroom was flawless. 200 guests filled the room. Director Hollis, 3 council members, commercial lenders, property investors, architects, attorneys, brokers, and representatives from families whose names carried weight in worlds both public and private. At 9:42, the air changed. Nadia Bey entered between her father and Sojin's uncle. She was elegant in the way of someone raised to understand that entrances are negotiations. Her dress was ivory. Her expression was composed. Behind her came 4 men from the Bay organization and 2 older women from Sojin's family. The entire security line straightened. I had heard her name. Of course I had. Nadia Bey was the daughter of Chairman Bey Minsik, whose family controlled shipping, private lending, and a network of influence Sojin's elders had wanted tied to the Kang organization for years. She was not merely a woman his family approved of. She was a treaty in heels. I had asked Sojin about her once. "A negotiation," he said. "And us? Not negotiable." I had believed him because I misunderstood the sentence. He meant his feelings for me were not open for discussion. He did not mean he would build his public future around them. Sojin crossed the ballroom to receive Nadia. I watched the body I knew become ceremonial. His shoulders settled. His face emptied. He placed one hand at her back and guided her toward the commercial council section. My section. My relationships. Director Hollis greeted her politely, then looked past Sojin and found me across the room. His expression changed by 1 degree. Confusion. Concern. A question he was too professional to ask. At 10:15, Sojin requested the microphone. The quartet faded. His guards repositioned. Daeho moved to the edge of the stage. Chairman Bay stood near the front with the satisfaction of a man watching a contract become flesh. Sojin thanked the investors. He thanked the executive team. He spoke about expansion, civic partnership, and a future in which the Kang Group would become the most influential hospitality organization in the Midwest. They were words we had shaped together at his kitchen table. Then he said, "Growth requires more than ambition. It requires unity." His eyes found mine. For 1 suspended second, the room disappeared. I waited for him to stop. He did not. He extended his hand toward Nadia. She joined him beneath the lights. "I am proud to announce a formal alliance between the Kang and Bay families," he said. "Nadia Bay will join the Kang Group as executive partner and, following our marriage next spring, as my wife." Applause broke across the room. His hand settled on her back. Nadia looked at me once. Her expression was not cruel. Cruelty would have made it easier. It was acknowledgement, the look of someone who knew I existed, knew what I had been to him, and had already accepted that none of it changed the arrangement. I set my untouched champagne on a passing tray. Then my feet carried me toward the elevator. I did not call Sojin that night. I returned to the South Loop apartment, which belonged to a Kang Group holding company, removed my heels, and sat at the kitchen table until dawn. It was not dramatic. Grief rarely is when nobody is watching. It was reaching for my phone and stopping my own hand. It was remembering the architectural plans. It was hearing him say one day, "Your name should be on a building," and realizing he had never put my name on anything that belonged to him. Tamsin Price arrived Sunday morning with 2 coffees and enough anger for both of us. We had met at 18 during college orientation in Columbus. Tamsin believed real friendship meant standing close enough to tell the truth before comfort could dilute it. I told her everything. The announcement. Nadia. The alliance. The way Sojin looked at me before continuing. The apartment. The 3 years. The West Loop venue. The blueprints. Every quiet promise I had treated like a future. Tamsin listened without interrupting, which was the hardest gift she ever gave anyone. When I finished, she leaned forward. "I need to ask you something," she said. Who built the Kang Group's relationship with commercial licensing? I knew where she was going. Me. Who does Director Hollis call? Me. Who knows the inspection directors, the zoning staff, the neighborhood representatives, the council offices, the lenders, and the event brokers? I do. And when those people think of the Kang Group as reliable, whose face are they remembering? I stared at the coffee between my hands. Tamsin said my name softly. "Ezin, you did not stand beside his empire. You built the part of it that could stand in daylight. I wanted to receive that. I could not yet. Grief does not make room for strategy until it has taken what it came for. So I cried then. Not in the ballroom. Not in the elevator. Not on the sidewalk. At my kitchen table, with my oldest friend holding my hand, I cried for the life I thought I had. Then, when it was finished, I wiped my face and opened my laptop. "Help me find an apartment," I said. Tamsin nodded once. There she is. Monday morning at 8:12, Director Hollis called my cell. Not the Kang Group office. Not Sojin. Me. "I attended the gala," he said. "I wanted to check in personally. I appreciate that. I will be direct. The city's working relationship with the Kang Group has been productive because our communication has been consistent. I need to understand whether that consistency remains." He was not asking about the company. He was asking whether I remained inside it. I looked at Tamsin, who had slept on my couch. "My professional relationships remain intact," I said carefully. "Wherever I work, Director Hollis, you will receive the same honesty and follow-through you have always received from me." There was a pause. "I expected that answer," he said. "Please let me know where you land." When the call ended, the apartment became very quiet. Tamsin watched me understand. Every alliance I had built carried my name, even when the company letterhead carried his. The paper remembered what people chose to forget, and now I did too. I re-signed Monday afternoon. My letter was 6 sentences long. No accusation, no emotion. Effective immediately. Daeho came to collect my access credentials. He stood in the apartment doorway holding a black security case. Did he send you because he thought I would refuse? I asked. He sent me because he knew I would not insult you. I handed over the building cards, office keys, and encrypted company phone. Deho looked at the items, then at me. The Bay Agreement was finalized 3 days before the gala, he said. The information landed without changing my face. He knew for 3 days? Yes. And came home to me each night? Deho's silence was the answer. Thank you, I said. He closed the case but did not leave. The elders believe the Bay Alliance will make him untouchable. Do you? Deho looked toward the kitchen table where my licensing files had once been stacked. No. I moved out 12 days later. I took my clothes, books, cast iron skillet, framed citizenship photograph of my parents, and the architectural pencil my father gave me when I graduated. I left the designer furniture, the art Sojin selected, the wine I never drank, and every object that had made his space feel like ours. My new apartment was in Pilsen. 2nd floor. Small kitchen. Bare tree outside the window. My name on the lease. No company between me and the door. No man's permission hidden inside the word home. For 2 weeks, I did almost nothing impressive. I woke at 3 in the morning. I avoided streets that passed Kang properties. I turned down 2 respectable job offers because respectable felt like another word for smaller. I did not want a safe place to recover. I wanted a place large enough to prove that what I had built was transferable. The call came on a Wednesday at 7:15 in the morning. Redevelopment. Everyone in Chicago hospitality knew the name. Victor Ree had spent 4 years trying to enter the luxury event market and 4 years meeting resistance at every important licensing turn. In public, he was a developer with excellent capital and difficult timing. In private, he was Sojin's most disciplined rival. The Ree and Kang organizations had avoided open conflict for 6 years because both men understood the cost. They competed through acquisitions, contracts, influence, and territory. Joining redevelopment would not merely mean changing employers. It would mean entering a room everyone believed belonged to the enemy. I accepted the meeting. The meeting took place 40 floors above the river in a glass conference room designed to make hesitation visible. Victor Ree sat at the head of the table. He was in his late 30s, controlled, sharp-eyed, and entirely different from the reckless rival Sojin's advisors liked to describe. 4 executives sat beside him. Legal, finance, development, and operations. They had my resume. They also had 3 years of rumors. The head of finance folded his hands. We understand you had a personal relationship with Mr. Kang. You understand correctly. And now you want to work for his primary competitor. I did not contact you, I said. You contacted me. Victor's gaze did not move. The finance director continued. Relationships developed under an employer do not necessarily transfer when an employee leaves. There it was. Not cruelty. Doubt. They believed I might have been Sojin's girlfriend with a polished title. They believed the power attached to me might have been borrowed from his name. I opened the portfolio I brought and distributed 4 copies of a 12-page analysis. Your River North project has failed twice because you are solving the wrong problem, I said. Your documentation is complete. Your architects are qualified. Your funding is verified. But your proposed event capacity conflicts with the neighborhood transportation plan, and every time the city raised that concern, your representatives answered with parking data instead of pedestrian flow mitigation. The legal director looked down at the report. I continued. You have treated licensing as a procedural obstacle. It is a trust problem. The city does not believe you understand the neighborhood you are entering. Give me 90 days. I will not promise approval. Nobody honest can promise that. I will promise that every decision-maker will understand exactly what you are building, who it serves, and how you will protect the community around it. Victor turned 1 page. What do you want? Director of Commercial Operations. Authority over city-facing strategy. A salary 20% above the range in your initial message. Performance equity in every property I take from stall to licensed. One executive almost smiled at the audacity. Victor did not. And if River North fails? Then you terminate me and lose 90 days you were already going to waste. Silence held for several seconds. Then Victor closed the portfolio. You start Monday. The finance director turned toward him. Victor, 90 days, he said. Let us find out whether the relationships belong to Kang or to Miss Okoye. That was the first obstacle. The second arrived on my 3rd day. A black sedan waited across from Ree headquarters when I left after dark. Deho stood beside it. He did not threaten me. He did not need to. His presence was a message about how my decision would be interpreted. "Sojin wants to speak with you," he said. "He knows my number. He believes Ree is using your anger." Then he still believes my decisions are reactions to him. Daeho's expression barely changed. "Victor Ree is not harmless. Neither is Sojin. You knew his boundaries. I knew the boundaries he allowed me to see." Daeho looked at the glass tower behind me. "If you take Ree through River North, the Bay family will consider it an attack on the Alliance. That property controls access to 3 future acquisitions. I am processing a lawful development application. In your world. This is my world," I said. "That is the part all of you forgot." He absorbed the sentence without argument. Then he opened the sedan door. "He will come to your apartment," he said. "That is not permission." Daeho met my eyes. "I know." He left. I spent the next 12 weeks proving the power was mine. Not through favors. Not through secret pressure. Through work. I met the neighborhood association in a church basement instead of summoning them downtown. I listened while residents described traffic from 3 existing venues and documented every complaint. I made Ree's architects redesign the arrival route, reduce peak capacity, fund late-night street management, and commit to hiring from the surrounding wards. The finance team fought the cost. I fought harder. "You have spent 4 years paying consultants to tell you the city is irrational," I told them. "You can spend 1 year proving you are responsible." Victor backed me. Director Hollis did not give me special treatment. That mattered. He challenged our timeline, required revised safety plans, and returned 1 submission with 11 corrections. We answered all 11 in 48 hours. At the final neighborhood hearing, the association president who had opposed redevelopment for 2 years stood and said, "Miss, Okoye is the first representative who asked what this project would cost us before explaining what it would earn them." The permit moved forward. River North was approved on day 87. When the email arrived, I was alone at my desk. I read it once, then again. No Kang letterhead, no Sojin, no borrowed authority. My name appeared as primary representative on the approval record. I called my parents. My father listened while I explained every stage. When I finished, he asked, "Whose name is on it?" "Mine." "Good," he said, and I could hear the pride he was trying not to make too large. "Then you built it." 3 weeks later, while organizing my archived records, I found the true scale of what I had left behind. Every Kang Group commercial renewal for the previous 2.5 years named me as primary contact. Every council memorandum listed my office. Every inspection resolution carried my signature. Every lender compliance package had been assembled through my department. But the most important file was a risk memorandum I had written 18 months earlier and sent to Sojin, the chief financial officer, and the legal team. It warned that the Kang Group's expansion loans were tied to uninterrupted licensing and occupancy thresholds across the 3 flagship properties. If more than 1 renewal was delayed beyond 60 days, the bank could freeze the next development draw. If a property remained restricted beyond 90 days, the lender could demand additional collateral. The memorandum had been acknowledged and forgotten because delays never happened while I was there. I sat at my kitchen table and understood the architecture completely. Sojin's legitimate empire looked diversified. In reality, its expansion plan balanced on 3 properties, 3 renewal calendars, and a network of city relationships nobody else inside his organization had bothered to maintain. I did not create that vulnerability. I had been covering it. My mother used to say, "The person who repairs the roof is forgotten until it rains." Chicago was entering spring. The rain had already started. Sojin came to my apartment on a Thursday evening. He buzzed once. I saw his face on the small screen and considered leaving him downstairs. Then I remembered all the unfinished sentences I no longer feared. I let him up. He arrived without guards inside the building, though I knew they waited on the street. Black coat. Controlled expression. Ink visible above his collar. The same man who could silence a room by entering it now stood beneath the weak hallway light of an apartment where his name opened nothing. I stepped aside. He took in the small living room, the second-hand shelves, the bare tree outside the kitchen window, and the framed approval notice from River North resting on my desk. "You did it," he said. "Yes. Victor gave you authority quickly." I earned it quickly. His gaze returned to me. The Bay family sees River North as a direct challenge. The city sees it as a licensed venue. "Ezin." He said my name with the old intimacy, as if pronunciation could rebuild access. I waited. "The announcement was structural," he said. The alliance protects thousands of people connected to my family. Nadia understands the arrangement. It was never about replacing what you and I had. I almost admired how completely he still misunderstood. You announced another woman as your wife in front of 200 people. I was going to explain. When? He did not answer. Before you came home to me that night? I asked. Before the wedding? Before I stood beside you at another gala and pretended the woman wearing your ring was a business document? His jaw tightened. I expected you to stay. The honesty of it entered the room like cold air. Of course you did, I said. You believed being necessary would keep me where being chosen did not. He went still. I walked to my desk, lifted the River North approval, and placed it between us. In 3 years, did you ever put my name on anything that belonged to you? I gave you my home, your company's apartment, your keys, your security, your space. I had permission to occupy what belonged to you. You know, it was more than that. Emotionally? Yes. Structurally? No. I opened one archived licensing file. My name is on every document that kept your legitimate world functioning. Your renewals, your inspections, your council correspondence, your lender compliance. I built the structure that allowed your darker empire to wear a clean suit in daylight, and you never once attached my name to the value I created. Something shifted in his face, not anger. Recognition. Late, heavy recognition. He looked at the approval notice again. Come back, he said. It was not romantic. It was more honest than romance. He needed me. No. I will end the public arrangement after the first year. I can give you your own division, equity, a property in your name. I remembered the unfinished drawing beneath the snowstorm lights. One day, you should put your name on a building like this. You are offering me ownership because you are finally afraid of my absence, I said. That is not the same as valuing my presence. His control cracked by one visible degree. Ree will use you against me. I am not positioning myself against you. You are opening the one property that blocks our expansion corridor. I am doing my job. You know what it costs me. I looked directly at him. I am not thinking about you at all. That is what is different now. The sentence landed harder than anger would have. He left without another word. 1 hour later, Deho called. The spring renewal cycle begins in 6 weeks, he said. All 6 properties are due. The new operations director believes the process will run as it always has. It will run exactly as the current team manages it. Deho was quiet. The bank covenants? I warned the company 18 months ago. I found the memorandum today. Then someone should finally read it. He exhaled once. Understood. The Commercial Council's annual business summit took place on the last Thursday of April. I arrived wearing a cream suit and a badge that read EZINNE Okwayi RHD Development, Director OFCOM Merkiel Operations. No burgundy dress chosen for someone else's attention. No borrowed access. My name, my role, my work. Director Hollis crossed the room as soon as he saw me. 2 council members followed. We discussed River North, neighborhood commitments, and the West Loop project Ree had authorized after my first approval. 3 of the 4 civic anchors who once surrounded the Kang table stood at ours. Not because I had taken them, because relationships move toward the people who maintain them. Sojin entered at 7:15. Nadia walked beside him. Deho and 6 guards moved behind them in a dark line. The room acknowledged Sojin, but it did not turn toward him the way it once had. He felt the difference immediately. Powerful people always notice when attention stops arriving automatically. Deho leaned close and spoke into his ear. Sojin's eyes moved across the hall and found me. I was answering a question from Director Hollis. I finished before looking back. Sojin crossed the room. Nadia remained 12 feet behind him. Director Hollis and the council members created polite space without fully leaving. Investors noticed. Conversations softened. Even Victor Ree, speaking near the stage, turned slightly toward us. Sojin stopped in front of me. For the first time since I had known him, he looked like a man who had arrived without control of what happened next. I made a mistake, he said. The sentence traveled farther than he intended. I held his gaze. He continued. I allowed my family to call an alliance a future. I stood inside a company you made possible and introduced someone else as the person who would build it beside me. Nadia's face changed behind him. Sojin did not look back. You created every legitimate relationship attached to my name, he said. You protected my properties, my investors, and my reputation. I treated the life you built as if it would remain whether or not I honored the woman building it. The room was silent now. He had never confessed weakness publicly. Not to elders, not to rivals, not to men who had challenged his authority. I chose what was expected, he said, and lost what was essential. For 3 years, a sentence like that would have broken me open. Now it only confirmed what I already knew. I know, I said. Then I turned to Director Hollis. You were asking about the West Loop timeline for Q3? Director Hollis looked at me for one measured second. Yes, he said, the transportation revision. I resumed the conversation. Sojin stood there long enough to understand that public regret did not create private access. Then he walked away alone. Nadia did not follow immediately. She looked at me with a new expression. Not triumph, not acknowledgement, calculation. She had just realized that the future she had agreed to marry was built on a foundation already walking in another direction. Comment I chose myself if you have ever stopped begging someone to recognize what you brought to their life. The first Kang renewal was delayed 19 days because the new operations director submitted an outdated occupancy plan. The second was flagged after a fire safety correction went unanswered for 12 business days. The third triggered the covenant. I did not interfere. I did not make a call against Sojin. I did not ask anyone to delay anything. I simply continued doing my work for redevelopment and stopped doing invisible work for the Kang Group. Without me, the organization met the system exactly as it had prepared to meet it. Poorly. The bank froze the development draw on 2 acquisitions. Investors requested an emergency review. The Bay family, whose alliance depended on access to the expansion corridor, demanded proof that Sojin could deliver the projected properties before the wedding contract became permanent. He could not. River North opened under redevelopment, while the Kang proposal across the district remained tied up in revised financing. The contrast became public. Business publications that once described Sojin as untouchable began asking why 3 Kang properties were simultaneously under supplemental review. Brokers who once waited for his decisions brought opportunities to Victor first. 2 long-term investors moved their capital into Ree's West Loop Fund after learning I would oversee compliance. Then, the Gold Coast flagship lost its unrestricted late event approval for 1 quarter because the replacement team missed a neighborhood reporting deadline I had never missed. That property generated enough revenue to support 2 weaker venues. The numbers turned quickly. Sojin sold the smallest restaurant to protect payroll. Then he sold the South Loop residential, building the building where I had once believed I lived in our home. The sale was not enough. By June, the bank required additional collateral. Chairman Bay refused to provide it without control of the legitimate company. Sojin refused to surrender control. Nadia ended the engagement 2 days later. Her public statement called it a strategic disagreement between families. Daeho told me the truth months afterward. Nadia had looked across a conference table at Sojin and said, "You asked my family to invest in an empire whose most valuable executive you humiliated in public." That was not strength. It was evidence that you cannot identify the source of your own power. The Bay Alliance disappeared. Without Bay Capital, the second acquisition collapsed. Without the acquisitions, investors invoked exit clauses. Without investor confidence, Sojin's elders did what powerful families always do when loyalty becomes expensive. They called it responsibility and removed him. At an emergency board meeting in July, Sojin Kang was voted out as chairman of the legitimate Kang Group. His uncle took temporary control. The company sold 2 more properties, including the West Loop venue I had once advised Sojin to buy. Victor Ree acquired it through a public sale. He assigned redevelopment oversight to me. When I walked through the empty ballroom with the keys in my hand, I remembered the night Sojin bought it because he listened when I was right. I did not feel victorious. There is nothing triumphant about watching proof that someone could have valued you and chose not to. But I did feel clear. Sojin had not lost everything because I destroyed him. He lost everything because he built an empire that depended on a woman he believed would remain invisible. When she left, the structure told the truth. Tamsin came to my apartment the evening the board decision became public. She arrived with Thai food, read the headline on my phone, and said one word: "Damn." Then she opened the containers and asked whether I wanted noodles or rice. That was why I loved her. She understood that another person's collapse was not the center of my life, simply because it proved I had mattered. We ate on the couch beneath the window. The bare tree had become green without asking permission from anyone who remembered it in winter. I thought I would feel more, I admitted. "You do feel more," Tamsin said. "It's just not about him anymore." She was right. For months, I had imagined satisfaction as Sojin finally understanding my value. But his understanding did not change my rent, my work, my peace, or the name on my approvals. His regret belonged to him. My future belonged to me. I had confused being needed with being chosen. That was the honest center of our story. Sojin had needed me genuinely. He trusted my judgment, relied on my steadiness, slept better because I made the public side of his world predictable. Need is intimate. Need is daily. Need can look like devotion when you are the person doing the carrying. But being needed and being chosen are not the same. Being needed means someone values what you provide. Being chosen means they honor the person providing it, even when doing so costs them something. When Sojin's family placed expectation on one side and me on the other, he believed he could choose expectation and keep my devotion. He thought infrastructure had no place else to go. You do not notice the foundation while the house is standing. You notice it when the walls begin to move. Redevelopment's West Loop venue opened the following spring, not the River North project, a larger one. The property Sojin had purchased because I found it. The property his board later sold because the empire could no longer carry its debt. Victor offered me naming authority as part of my performance equity agreement. I spent 3 days considering polished names that sounded expensive and meant nothing. Then I called my father. "What did you tell me when I left Columbus?" I asked. He did not hesitate. "Put your name on what you build." So I did. Okoye House. The letters were carved into pale stone above the entrance. My father inspected the installation himself and complained that one anchor bolt sat 2 millimeters off center. My mother cried before the sign was fully uncovered and denied it while wiping her face. The night before the soft opening, I went to the roof alone. I always visited a venue before the guests arrived. Buildings have a different truth when they are empty. You can hear what they are before people fill them with expectation. Chicago stretched below me. The river caught the last gold light. The skyline looked permanent from a distance, though I knew better now. Nothing is permanent merely because powerful men put their names on it. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I knew who it was before I opened it. Sojin had written only one sentence. "You built what I promised you, without me." I read it once. Then I deleted it, not from anger, because it did not require an answer. He was right. I had loved him. I would not rewrite that love into foolishness just because it ended painfully. He had seen parts of me clearly. He had remembered my father's dream. He had once unrolled a blank building beneath construction lights and told me my name belonged on it. The tragedy was not that none of it had been real. The tragedy was that it had been real, and he still believed reality could survive dishonor. Some part of what I felt for him would always live in the place where finished things go. Not erased. Not active. Finished. I placed both hands on the roof railing and looked down at the entrance where workers were polishing the stone beneath my name. I thought about my parents rebuilding themselves in a country that did not have a category for them. My father proving his engineering one permit at a time. My mother carrying mathematics across an ocean and placing it into students who would never know its cost. I thought about the woman in the burgundy dress counting backward toward an elevator because numbers were the only solid things left in the room. She believed she was walking away from the future. She did not know she was walking toward her own name. The next morning, I arrived before sunrise. Tamsin stood beside my parents near the entrance. Victor and the re-team waited inside. Director Hollis had sent a handwritten note congratulating me on a venue that had opened fully licensed and ahead of schedule. I held the key in my palm. For 3 years, I had kept another man's name standing. That morning, I unlocked a door beneath mine. The first light crossed the stone facade. Okoye House. I opened both doors and let Chicago in. There is one thing I want you to carry from my story. What you build inside someone else's world does not become their property simply because their name is on the front of it. Your discipline belongs to you. Your relationships belong to you. Your ability to see what a room needs, to solve what everyone else ignores, to remember people, to follow through, to create order where there was only pressure that leaves with you when you leave. You do not have to destroy the place that failed to honor you. Sometimes you only have to stop holding it together. Choosing yourself is not revenge. It is the decision to become present in your own life, to stop mistaking access for ownership, to stop confusing being useful with being loved, to stop waiting for someone else to attach your name to the value you created. Sojin chose the alliance his family demanded. Then he lost the alliance. He chose the appearance of strength. Then, the city saw how fragile his structure was. He chose a future without my name in it. And I built one where my name was impossible to miss. If you are the invisible foundation beneath someone else's life right now, hear me clearly. Not one brick of what you have built has been wasted. Every skill, every relationship, every late night, every problem you solved while someone else received the praise, it was preparation. Not for the day they finally recognize you. For the day you recognize yourself. Comment I Cho says myself if you are ready to put your name on what you build. And subscribe for the next story, because sometimes the most powerful ending is not watching his empire fall. It is watching her open the door to her own.